All right, Carl, how we doing today?
Doing well, thanks. Sean, how about yourself?
I am doing good. Well, first of all, thank you everybody for joining us. We're going to just hang out for just a minute or two and give some of the other attendees an opportunity to get in. So just hang tight with us for just a minute. We'll start in just a minute.
I mean, isn't that the rule today, Sean? Is that since we do everything remotely and cloud-based and through all these sessions, that everything has to start about 2 minutes late because everybody's getting off their other one that was scheduled right up to the same minute, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and so if you've been on some of these webinars that Carl and I have done in the past, you might realize or recognize that I look a little different. I'm not sitting in my office today, and I don't even have to ask Carl what the weather is like in Phoenix because I am in Phoenix with Carl. So, and I'm struggling.
Yeah, well,
This
you
dry
brought the
air
weather.
is killing my throat out here. So y'all will have to bear with me a little bit as I try to adapt to the dry air out here in Phoenix.
See, now Sean keeps saying the dry air, but the moment he landed came one of the days that we have a rare thunderstorm, and it's actually been raining here. I'm dying from the humidity of all this rain everywhere.
Well, I brought it out here with me, so.
That's what I said. I appreciate it. We were ready for our break. It's now time to head into the 3 days of fall we get.
Perfect. I'm glad I could help. All right, let's just give it just another minute or so, and then we'll get started here. Really cool, interesting topic. I'm excited to kind of talk about this kind of digital transformation, kind of secure and remote work environments for legal firms. I know we've done a lot of that, in the last couple of years, especially through the pandemic, and so I'm excited to kind of dig in and talk about some of these topics and some of the lessons learned, and share some good information with everybody on the call today. So.
Yeah, it's a lot of folks jumped in kind of head first, and now we're finally going back and saying, well, how should we have done it if we'd planned it?
Right. All right, so I think we're about 3 minutes over. Carl, you ready to get this thing started?
Yeah, let's get it kicked off. Let's go for it.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We are recording this event. I believe I hit the record button, so we are recording this event, and so we will email this out to everybody as well. So, if people that weren't able to attend or something kind of popped up, we'll be able to get it out to everybody that kind of registered. Also, there's an opportunity to kind of ask questions. So if you have questions through this kind of presentation, feel free to use the kind of questions section, and I'll do my best to monitor for those questions. And then we'll have a spot kind of at the end, and we'll kind of go through a little bit of Q&A. I think that is about all of my housekeeping. I guess kind of to start it off, if you're new or this is your first time, my name is Sean Brown. I'm the president here at SnapTech IT, and I am joined by my good buddy Carl Bickmore. How about a quick little intro, Carl?
Yeah, the CEO of SnapTech IT, and back when I very first started doing IT consulting work, my very first customer ever was our good friends at the Nearhood Law offices here in the Phoenix area, and they're still a client today. It's been 22 years now. It's been exciting.
Wow, that's awesome. All right, so let's dive into our topic today. So, Carl, help us understand, what do we mean by this kind of digital transformation?
Something that kind of drives me crazy is like these marketing terms come up, like cloud computing or zero trust, and they kind of have a lot of different meanings. And we used a common term that a lot of people are talking about, digital transformation. but I just wanted to make sure that people know what that means, at least to us when we're referring to it. And I think this is a pretty general term these days, or there's a lot of consensus around it. And this is very interesting to think about in the context of law firms. There might be a little bit of a reputation of being a little slow to adopt technology things, a little more focused on being lawyers, a little less focused on what cool doohickey I need to plug in to make everything do stuff. And so this is a key question for a lot of law firms that are asking the question, are we still doing things the old school way? Is there a better way? Should we transform our work to a new digital method? So it's typically going to be cloud-based. It's rejecting the old client server model of the past. Can you make your workers work from anywhere and be exactly as functional no matter where they are, and exactly as secure no matter where they are? That's the real question. And this is a really cool thing that is one of the few positive things that came out of the fact that we all suddenly found ourselves doing work remotely, and that digital transformation got accelerated for a lot of folks. And now it's time to ask the question, like I said before, when we were first talking, was it done right? And are we making the right choices? Or did we cling on to the past too much? And now it's finally time to make that digital transformation.
Yeah, exactly. Well, awesome. Well, thanks for kind of setting the stage and kind of helping kind of frame what it is we're kind of talking about and getting some terminology right. I know that we've helped a ton of our law firm clients kind of implement, several remote working kind of solutions, but help us understand kind of industry as a whole, kind of what are we seeing out there?
So we saw this in law firms, and this is true of a lot of other. In fact, the percentage might be actually a little lower for law firms, but nonetheless still a very high percentage. 46% of firms reported investing in remote working software as a direct result of the pandemic, which makes a lot of sense. Suddenly we found that going to the office didn't make sense, meeting clients in person didn't make sense like it did before. And I'm a little old school myself. If I have a meeting, and if it's possible, I'd rather sit across the table for somebody than I would over another Zoom or another Teams meeting or whatever the thing is. But the reality of it is the world has changed, and there are some benefits to it. Some things can now be more efficiently done, and you can have some things in person and some things, over a remote tool or something like that. So, it's interesting that in the survey, the statistics we researched, we found that the spend was kind of interesting. There was the largest one was in video conferencing tools. Everybody suddenly found themselves with their Zoom subscription that didn't have one before, or something similar. The e-signature platform was the next one. And so, it's interesting that that's been one of those areas that some people are like, hey, it's always got to be on paper. Now we're finding e-signature used even in the situations that people used to insist that it had to be physical paper. And look, maybe the jury's not still out on that in every way, but the reality of it is e-signature software is here, and folks are using it to great effect, and it's being effective and useful and holding up. Law practice management software, a lot of folks like, hey, why do I need this server here? Maybe there's a cloud-based thing I can do. And of course, how can you be more efficient and make time and billing easier? Communication software, things like Microsoft Teams were finally getting adopted in a meaningful way and changing the communication, or even other things similar to it like Slack. Here's the interesting thing. 60% of firms say their revenue stayed the same or increased during 2020, which is the most restrictive part, which meant that remote work really took off. And the majority of firms, although not a super majority, but a majority nonetheless, did not see a revenue hit, and many even saw increased revenue while working remotely. That is evidence that this can work and it can be effective.
Right. Excellent. Well, thanks for laying that out for us. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of the barriers. I know change is hard, but sometimes change in a law firm is even harder, especially when we're talking about updating, kind of processes, procedures. I mean, that can be some pretty difficult work to get changed. So what are some of the reasons why this is so hard?
Well, look, being around a lot of law firms and a lot of lawyers of different kinds, I think that something that's relatively true is lawyers or legal firms want technology that works so well that it's invisible. It's not a barrier. It doesn't get in the way. It doesn't cause extra steps, you know. And a lot of times when technology has been improved or new technology has come out, it feels like it's extra steps or it gets in the way of getting to the work that you need to do. And so I know there's a lot of lawyers that are just simply struggle with putting up with the extra steps or the other things. And I would argue that there might be a wider scope view that you could take of it, where it actually, in fact, is more efficient and more effective and maybe even easier, but you need to think of it collectively. And that's where I think the remote work question really changes the game. If it is as effective from your house or from a hearing or from your local Starbucks to access and do your work versus always needing to be in the office, that's an interesting question, because what does that mean for your efficiency? But really, look, there's a lot of law firms want technology, they view technology as a burden, not as something that helps them, and they feel like it's a necessary evil. Not a strategy for improvement. And I think plenty of people do see it the other way, but it's just a challenge. There's cultures, there's fear of the change. They've seen a lot of changes go poorly in technology through the years. And not having a formal change management process or just general resistance. And I will say that, and I like this one that says leadership resistance to change. Almost always the folks, the paralegals, the firm administrators, the folks that are down in the grind doing a lot of the document editing, a lot of the administrative work, they're actually for it. The leadership is actually typically where we struggle for the really the gung-ho adoption. Look, and a lot of this has to do with, like, look, some of the smartest people I have ever met are attorneys, just incredible. But they don't always have a good handle or grasp on technology. And because they don't understand it, they don't understand the ins and outs of it, they can become dismissive of its value or its risk or benefit. And so those are things that I think, and look, with all the work that you have to do, who has time for that, right? So that can become a really big issue, as, law firms don't specialize in, technology education. And so that's an issue. And of course, some look at the cost and say, look, we're so entrenched in our server and our old system, and look what it's going to cost us to migrate. There are certainly legitimate financial concerns as well that can happen in a digital transformation.
Yeah, so I think client expectations have changed a little bit as well, right? I know, that was some of the feedback that we've been getting from some of our kind of legal firms as well. So what are some of the kind of client expectation shifts that have now happened?
Yeah, it's important to remember that, look, you got to have competitive advantage. If you're looking for new opportunities, you want those referrals to come in. People now are beginning to see, oh, I have to drive there oh, that's what I got to do. I've got to write a paper check to pay you. That billing's not going to show up for 2 months. There's just things that are different now from the client expectations. So much of our world is fast moving and ease of access from technology. I oftentimes like to think about the difference between your experience with technology on Sunday night and then Monday morning. Meaning Sunday night at home, you probably have a one-button remote-ish that gets you all sorts of things you can see at the drop of a hat. You can see your cameras, you can read text incoming, all this stuff happens easily. And then in the morning, you have to go to a specific location, you have to log in a certain way, and you get this older kind of interface, and this older kind of software, and it does not feel near as smooth. And that's what we're facing when we don't make these transformations. And what our customers are expecting is more like the Sunday night experience, if that makes sense. They want to know that you're protecting their data. They want to know that you're secure, that the things are automated, and that things are easier to do. And you don't always have to be in person.
I like to kind of blame Amazon because, a personal experience and story, we've all become, expected to get everything almost on demand. Like, I ordered something from Amazon last week at like 11 o'clock in the morning, and it showed up at 2 o'clock at my house. Is that not insane?
And you're like, why long.
So, I think just our expectations around, technology and how things get delivered and services like that are changing drastically right now. Like I was pretty blown away that I ordered something at 11 and got it at 2. That was nuts.
It's phenomenal. Well, technology in action there,
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I know we get asked this question a lot too. And so this is some good information. So what kind of tools for this kind of securely working remotely, some of the common software, what are we seeing out there that could really help with this kind of remote work and securely being able to work remotely?
Well, yeah, I think this is like, in some ways, the money shot for some people because they say, okay, I believe that technology can happen, but how are people really going about this, right? And what's actually going on out there? What are they doing to solve that? So I can go talk to people or research and look at it. So I feel like it's obligatory for us to at least mention some trends we're seeing on some tool adoption and some software things out there. So when I put this together, I was thinking, okay, what are the common ones that people are really making change? Well, I'm seeing a lot of folks leaving the traditional server structure at the office with a client application that you have to like remote desktop into or something like that if you're remote, and going with cloud-based practice management tools. And so I listed some ones that we've seen have become pretty popular: Clio, MyCase, Practice Panther, Rocket Mentor. They're all very, very fast-growing companies right now, used by hundreds and thousands of firms out there, very popular. And the e-signature, the three ones that we probably see the most are DocuSign, HelloSign, and EchoSign. EchoSign, some people will associate with Adobe because they purchased that several years ago. It's just part of the full Adobe suite products that are offered. And we're seeing new project management tools used to do matter management. Basecamp, Asana are some examples. We've seen a big adoption on internal communication tools, being able to chat or send things back and forth, things like Microsoft Teams, FlowDoc, Slack, very, very common. Something that I use personally in my business, and I think a lot of folks could really appreciate, is some calendar automating tools. I happen to use Calendly, and that one I think is one of the simpler ones to use, but Doodle's excellent, Calendar Hero, Schedule Once. There's some very common ways, and all you really have to do is send somebody a link, they click on it, and they can real time see where there's holes in your schedule. You click it, and it automatically sets up your Zoom meeting or your Teams meeting. You don't have to do anything, and all the calendar invites go out. And so there's some really cool, interesting things that can be done with that. And I think another very important one, of course, for most firms, it's a lot of document management. And so having a good, secure, and securely configured. It's not just enough to buy a secure product, but also to configure it securely. A file sharing tool, a cloud file system. We're very big fans of the Ignite file system from an ease of use and security standpoint, but SharePoint and OneDrive have some real up and coming things. BoxNet, Citrix ShareFile, these are really common high-end ones that we specifically see and know to be better on the security standpoint from some of the alternative tools you might know out there that are very common.
Yeah.
And then time tracking tools are doing some really interesting things about helping track times on things like that text you sent. How long did that take? How long did that email take? Integrations with phone systems that tell you how long a phone call, and you can attribute it to a client. It can make the recording of time far more accurate, and which actually typically results in a more accurate billing is a higher billing as well, if that's a benefit. So Time Miner and Excel are two we've seen out there. So that's a quick little tool shot for everybody, for those interested in checking out how you can actually go about some of this stuff, what tools you could implement. I would just caution you that no tool actually does anything for you. It's the process you put behind it, and the training, the people that you put behind it. So simply purchasing a tool doesn't solve your problem, but it can be an important part of the decision.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got all that, right? And so we can't forget about security. So security aspects that a law firm needs to be thinking about as they kind of move to the cloud and look at some of the kind of remote technology. Help us understand this list here.
Well, I think this was especially an important realization for folks that have had some really bad experiences, because the migration or digital transformation that was COVID related or COVID caused was done somewhat under duress in an emergency. And a lot of times this insecurely and with glaring holes. And there have been a lot of firms, a lot of folks that have had some really bad experiences happen and some cybersecurity incidences that have really made for some tough days. And so it's important to remember that not only is it okay to go to the cloud, but it needs to be secured as much, if not more, than other forms of computing systems. And so, look, a lot of folks think, oh, well, if I put it in the cloud, they can't ransomware it. No, that's just not true. It simply can be. A lot of folks will implement it and just use things like simple authentication, a username and a simple password. It's just not enough today. You must have multi-factor authentication in place where not only do you have your username and password, but also a text or a code from an app. There's several ways it can be done, but that's an essential component. End-to-end virus protection, make sure you're up to date, make sure it's running correctly. And what you might traditionally think of as antivirus is actually becoming a very outdated technology. What you should be looking into is endpoint protection or antivirus that also includes features like XDR or managed detect and response, MDR. That is a far more effective way to defend yourself from a virus or an attacker. Look, and don't forget, just because you found a vendor that can do something online means it's a great vendor you should work with. Not everybody out there on the cloud is doing a good job of securing your systems or is even here next year. And so you really have to be careful and check the reputation of your vendors, check their size. If you're not sure how to vet a vendor, I'm sure that we could help, or others can help you with that process in showing you some common tools and ways that you do due diligence on a vendor to make sure they're good. And don't forget the value. You still need to back things up. I can't tell you how many times we look at an Office 365 setup or some other type of cloud file system, and there is no additional backup. And all it takes is one ransomware thing or one something, and you just simply cannot recover that data. Or even simple, like a malicious act of an attorney leaving the firm, or an accident. So having good backup disaster recovery of your cloud things is helpful. And really all this comes down to is like, how do you avoid the common pitfalls? Just simply opening up a remote desktop connection to your computer, to your firewall, is extremely dangerous. And many people have regretted that. And I would say some of the old school techniques that we still have a lot of customers that are working on transitioning out of is a VPN first, multi-factor, and then into remote access. And that is certainly more secure and not a terrible solution. But really, if you're doing digital transformation, you can leave some of that dynamic behind, still have security, and not need to do these kind of old school ways. And look, here's the last thing. If you have all this stuff on a laptop, right, and that laptop gets stolen because you were flying and you sat it down on an airport bench or at the Starbucks or whatever, if that laptop hard drive is not encrypted, somebody can take that hard drive right out, plug it into any other computer, and see any file on that system. And so encryption while in transit is important, making sure you're using secure websites, secure resources, secure email, but it also needs to be encrypted at rest, meaning when it's turned off, that hard drive is encrypted. And that is Carl, a relatively straightforward thing to set up, but something that most people don't do. Yeah, go ahead.
Carl, you mean like if you happen to go to dinner with some friends and you hide your laptop bag and, and people bust your back window and steal your whole laptop bag, something like that?
Yeah. Sounds really familiar, Sean. Do you know anybody who had that happen?
Yeah. There's a couple of things that I want to touch on. There's a couple of things I want to touch on. Help us just understand, because we're kind of tech nerds and we understand what XDR and MDR mean. Can you give me like 10 seconds on that? And then help us understand this application control.
Oh yeah, I skipped over that one too. Well, so XDR or MDR is taking antivirus beyond just the ability to look for a virus signature file or virus-like behavior and stop something, but actually get into a new type of anomaly and behavior detection that can really correlate between multiple systems that you're connected to. So think maybe something's that doesn't look like a virus is going on. Maybe somebody's like successfully logged into your network and transferring files around and it's touching 3 or 4 systems. Not only do you get the point of view in an XDR or MDR system of anomalous behavior, but it can correlate it with all the other systems in your network. And so now you get this comprehensive point of view and it's much easier to figure out what's going on.
I've got a good story around that one. So let me see if I can't use an example to help kind of paint that picture. So we had a client one time that logged into their Office 365 account in Atlanta, and then 15 minutes later they logged into it in Nashville, Tennessee. And so we call that impossible travel.
They haven't invented transporters yet?
Not yet. And so we were able to contact the user and let them know that, hey, we think your account's been compromised because we just saw 2 different logins from 2 different geos. Let's go change your password. So that's kind of an example of some of this, behavior kind of things that we can kind of pick up with some of these technologies. So help us understand app control real quick.
Right. Yep. Well, it's a new level of detection that's out there. If you haven't invested in that, it's not incredibly more expensive than antivirus, and it's far more effective.
And help us understand app control real quick.
Okay, well, application control is a new trending utility. It's been used in banking systems and in government systems for several years, and it's now finding its way, let's say, call it to the common folk, us little people who are running small businesses that are trying to make computer systems work for us. Application control is, in my opinion, even more effective than your endpoint protection because it by default blocks anything on your computer from running, any script, any access, any web add-on thing from getting into your system and doing anything unless it's been expressly identified and approved. It typically needs to be administered by somebody in IT who knows how to properly do that process. But if you do that, you'll find it very difficult. Like we have penetration tests where we hire hackers to get into us and our clients' networks, obviously known that they're going to come. And when we have the application control in place, they are unsuccessful. But when we have traditional antivirus or even XDR or MDR, we'll get alerts that they're there, but they oftentimes can't fully stop them. And so this is the next level of protection. And it still needs to be combined with something like an XDR or an MDR endpoint protection because there's this detection element you still need. But application control is excellent prevention. It prevents the bad people from doing things that have never been seen before. This is getting into the buzzwords, but this is into the zero trust area where no file, no program, no executable is trusted. It has to be expressly approved. Nothing can run if not expressly approved.
Excellent. All right. So moving on. Kind of additional kind of recommendations or considerations in setting up these kind of remote, secure environments. What do we need to be thinking about here to kind of stay ahead of this curve?
Well, strengthening Wi-Fi encryption, router firmware updates. Like if you're at home, you're going to have some kind of home router there. Even if it's a simple one, when new updates come out, apply them. Don't run the old type of encryption. Run the newer kind. So this is a really technical term, but you get in there, there's WPA, WEP, WPA2 and 3. Run the highest version of that. It's going to be far better at preventing people from snooping in on your Wi-Fi. As we just talked about just a moment ago, application control provides a new, really thick layer of defense and protection. But also, really, don't forget the value of doing this in a policy-driven way for your firm. Have a policy that says we encrypt desktops and laptops. Have a policy that says we do multi-factor authentication. Build these policies in a way to make it very clear to your IT team or your IT provider what the standard is that you require. Give them a policy that they can work on and be held accountable to, right? There's also other great things like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick on the policy thing. I know this is a policy we have internally and one that we recommend when we have people working remotely, but we do not allow any personal devices to be used whatsoever for business use. So no home computers can connect to the file share or can connect to the VPN. And so if you're not adhering to that level of security, I would highly encourage you to implement a policy that stipulates that users have to use a business-owned machine because you don't know what's on. You don't know what websites little Johnny's been going to, or what might be on that home computer if it doesn't have the right protection. And if you allow VPN, or if you allow access to business level software, you run the risk of exposing that to that home computer. So that's just a little tip that I would say is, put that policy in place. Don't allow any non law firm owned machines to access business equipment or business technology.
Yeah, and that's a great example of, like, just how much risk do you want in your business? How much do you want to put your business cybersecurity or the strength and integrity of your data behind somebody's personal computer that anybody in their household might walk up and use, not understanding the implications of what an issue might be? It's something that I think was a great example of one of the things that got kind of blown out and wasn't considered much in the pandemic. I mean, shoot, we're still having supply chain issues today on laptop purchases and docking stations, right, and things like that. But the reality of it is that if you're putting unknown, uncontrolled, unmanaged systems into your access to your data and network, you now are basically opening up whatever they do to all of your client stuff, all of your financial. This is a risk that you might have not considered how heavy that risk really is. Which also gets to the next one about employing the principle of least privilege. This is something we talk about in cybersecurity or just IT circles in general, that you don't give people access to things just out of convenience. You give them access to things that they actually specifically need. And if they don't need it, you specifically deny access. That way, if somebody happens to be the source of, for instance, one of the horrible ransomware infections, or some kind of data grab that's going to be on the dark web and sold, or whatever the various types of attacks that might happen, that they can access things that are unrelated to their work, and it limits your risk some. And this is just a general good principle. Why on earth would you want to have one company share that anybody could open up the HR files or the corporate accounting files? That most people understand that. So just use that principle in every way. If somebody, when they remote access, only needs access to these 4 case files, maybe you can restrict it to that. Or maybe it's just these 2 applications and not this. Or look, everybody's got a unique situation. It's always worth a conversation with a qualified professional that can help you guide. But work under the principle of least privilege. Only give people the least privilege required. And there's other ones on here that are great too, like choosing a solid remote access software that's reputable, get good advice, ask multiple sources. Don't simply grab one off of the first Google search you do. That could be pretty risky. And then the last one I really like, because the reality is if you do all these things, your end users, if they simply have no care or are somewhat ignorant to the risks of answering the wrong email or clicking the wrong Google search result, they're going to cause problems. And so that's where we get, as we talk about the human firewall, that is a security awareness program. And these are pretty easy now that you can sign up your people like right when they're first hired, and then they're in the system. They can get regular training, regular reminders. And also what we tend to do is also send simulations to them. So if we want to test if they'll answer a convincing looking phishing email, and if they'll open that attachment, and then heaven forbid open that attachment and allow things like macros to run, which is specifically saying you can run code on my system, then we can put them into additional training to make sure that they know you just shouldn't be doing that. And so there's something to be said for the vigilance of making sure, because you're really only as strong as your weakest link in the awareness realm.
And massive requirement if you go for any kind of compliance or you're trying to get cyber insurance right now, you've got to have this in place right now. So
right. And if you don't have cyber insurance, if you haven't heard of it, we've had a webinar. We have a lot of material on that. We're in no way insurance broker, but boy, we've seen what it's like when somebody has a cybersecurity incident and they don't have it. And we've also seen what it's like when they do have it. And we've also seen how much tougher the cyber insurance questionnaires are now. And you want to make sure you're answering those accurately, because we've seen a lot of folks, even IT professionals, that are incorrectly answering these and very much regretting it come time to ask for a insurance relief from an incident.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So peering into the future, what do we need to be thinking about?
Look, I think that not only are our clients expecting this kind of digital transformation to be there, but your workers are as well. The first time I heard that discussion, I think it was somebody at an Intel conference. It's been probably 15, 20 years now, somebody talking about Sunday night into Monday morning, like I was. So how society is different levels of transformation. Work tends to be some of the parts that lag behind. And this is not a dig, and not every law firm is like this, but there is a bit of a reputation among the legal professions of being more slow to adopt or more laggard in technology adoption. And this is going to become a competitive advantage or potentially disadvantage, as you'll find it harder to attract and retain staff. I mean, the modern attorney coming out of school today looking to join as some type of associate or to find their way into your practice, they're going to be frustrated. They're not going to want to work for a firm that's stuck in the old ways. You're going to find that your clients won't want it, your staff won't want it, and this type of transformation will become a natural part of society. And it's really up to you to decide, do you want to take advantage of it and get ahead of it? Do you want to make it a strength rather than a weakness? You want to get ahead, or do you want to continue to be one of the laggards? And what will that mean to your organization? I think it's an interesting question. You know, everybody has their own path, but I think this remote legal is here to stay. Just like we're seeing 40% of doctor's visits are now telehealth rather than in person. Legal consults are going to be that way too. It's the new norm, as they say, at least from a technology standpoint. And so be prepared and be ready to do it correct and protect and reduce your risk, and also make everybody's day a little easier, you know?
All right, so how about you just touch real quick on our approval process, and then we'll try to wrap it up. I know we're getting we're a little past due right now, so.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm a little wordy, whoops. So I'll just real quick, I think the logic of why we want to show this is the SnapTech way as we talk about it with any of our customers. I think it's important that you do the right things and that you do them in the right order. And that's really the thing we want to do, because I think the real temptation is to go back to our list of tools and then just start buying tools and say, okay, everybody, here you go. But I think it really is always best that you first do some type of discovery or risk analysis or assessment that's meaningful, not cursory, but meaningfully looks at all the aspects of your firm, and then you figure out the right strategy of when to do what in the right order from a digital transformation. It might be starting with migrating your firm management software to something cloud-based, but it might be something else is better first. Maybe it's a higher risk right now that you don't have multi-factor authentication or XDR or MDR or application control in place. And so that would be a better first step as an example. So don't forget the value of going through these things in the order of assessment, and then going through the onboarding process, you're documenting, fixing anything that needs to be fixed with remediation, and then you can get into the support cycle, any special projects, and then ongoing management. This is how we do IT, but this applies to any digital transformation as a process or methodology. First, learn more about it, make your plan. Don't just start buying or doing bits and pieces and say, now we digital transfer, and be comprehensive, typically multi-year plan, to be frank. That's a far more effective way to make these cultural shifts that you need to make. So that's our quick pitch for that is, don't just start getting tools.
All right, so from a question standpoint, I don't see any current questions right now. Let me see. Oh. So here you go, Carl. What solutions do you recommend for protecting users at home?
Yeah, well, so this is an interesting question. So we earlier talked about, well, are they using firm equipment at home, or are they talking about just how do you protect your house in general? I'll go with the business answer real quick first, which is if you're running business equipment and you have these tools in place like multi-factor authentication, good endpoint protection, maybe with XDR, MDR, application control, you're really doing a lot of good things for the home. The other things I'd tell you is like, look, beyond work, and you just want to say, how do I make my home a safer environment? I think that you can do a lot by the strength of the endpoint or antivirus software you pick, and also making sure you're putting passwords on things. And a lot of times I see people doing things like having a document on their system that holds their usernames and passwords, those get compromised and spread and cause all sorts of havoc for people. I would say look into some password vault softwares. There's several of them out there. We talk about LastPass a lot. Dashlane is another one we've seen. There's several out there. Simply do a little research, find out if there's, and you can really do a lot by making sure there's passwords on things, making sure you're using secure, long, complicated passwords, and having something that helps you remember them that isn't a Word or Excel file or some type of simple note that can be easily kind of hacked and then cause you a world of trouble. Those are just a couple of quick thoughts. And encryption on your wireless as well. Make it a little tougher to get into your wireless network.
Yeah. All right. I think we got one more little thing here. So this is our opportunity to help. And so you want to kind of run through this real quick?
Yeah. So look, we understand that this is a lot of generic content, and you might want to be interested in how it can apply to your law firm specifically. We are offering a no-cost 30-minute rapid security risk assessment. This would be a follow-up call, and they go through a questionnaire with you. It's relatively quick, and out of it, we're going to give you a formal report that shows a heat map. It's a little hard to see with the size of that graphic, but it'll place dots and where your questions and answers landed. You do not need to be incredibly technical. You just need to be able to describe how your firm does a few things on the computer. And if you use a computer system, you probably can answer those questions. Or if it's an unknown, we can note that as well. And so we encourage you to take advantage of this. It's no cost thing, and it's going to give you a report that you can run with that might give you some ideas of how to prioritize what things your firm needs to look into next. And also we have a kind of a fun little a giveaway for the folks that are getting registered as well with the Yeti Hopper Flip 8 soft cooler. So.
Look, I'm a big Yeti fan. Just so you know, this Yeti fits directly into the back of the golf cart basket. And so it's a perfect, and since my birthday is next month, I figure we'd give away a bunch of Yeti coolers. So it should be a lot of fun. But this, Carl, you're exactly right. This kind of 30-minute kind of rapid security risk assessment, it's really simple. We'll ask a number of questions. You know, you answer the ones that we know or that you know and that you don't know. And then we'll give you a report at the end of it that helps you just kind of identify critical and high risk areas in your environment. And then what's really cool is it also provides you recommendations for each of those based on how you answer the questions. So
yeah, and take that to whoever does your IT and ask the questions. And the ones that you didn't know, maybe you'll want to follow up and figure out what the answer is too.
Absolutely. So that's that. And I think that's kind of all we have time for today. Like always, we have a ton of educational resources on our website, and be on the lookout for our next webinar that we'll be doing next month. Carl, any parting words?
No, be safe. Don't fear the change. It's going to be good for you. It might be painful getting there, but once you're there, you'll be like, why did I ever do it the other way?
That's right. Well, thank you everybody for attending today. Like always, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to give us a call at any time. You can find, like I said, a ton of resources on our website. And until next time, be safe, and we'll see you next month. Take care.